I don't know if you've noticed this, Aaron, but I noticed like it's a weird thing happening with the DC bureau chief of The Intercept keeps dunking on podcasters like a guy named Ryan Knight. Ryan Knight used to be a Warren supporter, right? And then he woke up and he saw through it all. Maybe it was when she called Bernie a sexist and he knew that was garbage and he saw the whole garbage thing and he saw her become a different person in the primary. And so whatever, Ryan Knight woke up to the two-party duopoly. And he's now to the left of the Democratic Party, and he's calling out their corruption on the regular. And people like Ryan Grimm, the DC bureau chief of The Intercept, go on Twitter to dunk on him on the regular. Like, the DC bureau chief gives a shit about a podcaster on fucking Twitter is nuts to me. But it's not nuts once you know what they're doing, right? So they're paid propagandists, right? So we just talked about it in the last segment that the Intercept is all. We don't know exactly how much money they're getting directly from the CIA or if it's any at all. There's no way to know. But it's certainly they repeat CIA talking points when it comes to reporting on Syria, on Venezuela, on Russiagate. It's straight up. And now, so same thing with the Washington Post. Right, so the Washington Post is owned by Jeff Bezos, who's in bed with the CIA to the tunes of, when I started reporting, it was $600 million, about 3 times what the Washington Post is worth. So he was getting more money on the regular from the CIA than the paper was worth. And they don't disclose that when they write about foreign policy or anything that has to do with CIA. The reporters at the Washington Post are not allowed to disclose the conflict of interests there. Isn't that amazing? And so their lead guy to cover progressive politics is a guy named Dave Weigel. Now, he was chosen by Jeff Bezos. Why? To cover progressive politics, Dave Weigel, because he's a right-wing Republican, and he used to do pro-war rallies in college. And so he got handpicked, of course, to go cover progressive politics, right? But now he says he's a Democrat. Well, here's the kind of reporting he does. On Twitter, again, coming out after me, a pothead in my garage, this is the guy handpicked by Jeff Bezos to be the lead guy to cover progressives at the fucking at the Washington Post. And this is how he spends his time trying to, and here again, this is dishonest. And I'm going to show you how he has to dishonest smear a podcaster. He goes, this is over Forced to Vote. He goes, Dore used to work at TYT, whose founder co-founded the most effective organization for replacing centrist Democrats with leftists in my lifetime, the Justice Democrats. So here's Dave Weigel standing for the Justice Democrats. Why? Because they're not really lefties. They're doing the bidding of the establishment now, so Dave Weigel can defend them. He says, the whole losing means actually winning thing seems less fun, than actually winning, which the Justice Democrats does. Well, a real reporter who actually has won awards, maybe the best reporter of our lifetime, Glenn Greenwald, responds to Dave Weigel of the Washington Post, saying the other co-founder of the Justice Democrats is Kyle Kulinski, who supports Dore's strategy. Isn't it amazing how Dave Weigel just left that piece of information out to his followers and his readers? Now they'll be misinformed. And because he told them half a truth. And even less than half a truth, because the Justice Democrats are not an effective organization for representing the left. They're an effective organization to pretend they're going to oppose the establishment. They're not. So 2/3 of this is just misinformation and a lie. And that's what Dave Weigel does on the regular. And he does it when he's coming after me. Why? Because I exposed that he's who he is. And he can't stand it. The first time I exposed who he was when he wrote this article. The Seth Rich conspiracy shows how fake news still works. Well, he's supposed to disclose that the CIA is in a conflict of, he's given $600 million to the owner of the paper. The CIA, which is involved in the Seth Rich conspiracy theory, none of that did they disclose. None of it. Jeff Bezos is doing huge business with the CIA while keeping his Washington Post readers in the dark because they're not allowed to disclose that, which is journalism malpractice. So someone asked him about it on Twitter, a guy named Russ G. Lewis, said, hey, why don't you ever disclose this? Why don't you ever disclose that you have this conflict of interest that The CIA gives the owner of your newspaper 3 times the money your newspaper's even worth on a yearly basis. And they probably give way more because Bezos sits on the Pentagon board now, too. This is what Dave Weigel said back to him. I don't know if you can read that. It's kind of light. He says, well, I can hardly brush aside the reporting of hangthebankers.com because that was, he linked to an article called from a new website called hangthebankers.com. And why did he have to link to an article from hangthebankers.com? Because all the other articles that talk about the CIA's connection to the Washington Post and Jeff Bezos have been scrubbed. In The Nation, they wrote about it. It got taken down, but we got it through the Wayback Machine. That's why. So this is, again, lying. This is what we would call gaslighting. He's smearing the source, pretending that it's not true, but he doesn't actually address it. So that's called gaslight. Again, if you followed him or read him, you would be completely misinformed. That's what the Washington Post does. They misinform. They don't inform you. And so Rush G. Lewis comes back with another one from somebody at Zero Hedge. He goes, here you go, Mr. Professional Reporter that apparently knows nothing about his own newspaper. And so he goes, that it was Bezos, not the Post. Now go away. Oh, ownership has no effect on the... I guess he never read Manufacturing Consent, the seminal work on how journalism works in America and how its propaganda is funneled through news agencies like the Washington Post, owned by the richest man who has a $600 million contract. So he's trying to pretend, nothing to see here, go away. I'm a lying fraud, Dave Weigel. He says, now Dave, so why do I show you all that? To show you what a piece of it Dave Weigel is, what 100% propagandist he is. He's a pro-war Republican who literally organized pro-war rallies for the Iraq War while he was a journalism student. What journalist would do that? Dave Weigel. Hey, you organized right-wing pro-war rallies while you were in journalism school? Jeff Bezos wants your resume. He's got a job for you, Dave. And then Jimmy Dore's going to fucking make fun of you for the rest of your life. So now he stopped trying to come after me because I humiliate him on the regular. And Ron actually did it. I'm going to show you that video in a second. Ron brought some of that Pittsburgh heat to that to that fucking douchebag coward Dave Weigel, who's afraid of his own shadow. Dave Weigel says he goes after Ryan Knight. Again, a guy who's a podcaster who just is to the left of the Democratic Party and tells the truth. He doesn't lie about the Democratic Party. He tells the truth about the Democratic Party. And now, Mr. Establishment Attack Dog, Dave Weigel from the Washington Post, owned by Jeff Bezos, handpicked by Jeff Bezos, says Ryan Knight is changing his handle from Proud Resistor to Proud Socialist, told the story of the clout chase here. First of all, Dave Weigel is like if a flat tire was a person, just so you know. Oh, look, so-called progressive journalists who organize pro-war Iraq rallies is criticizing people for changing their minds. Isn't that kind of amazing? You learn more from reading the coupon book than you do from Dave Weigel's columns. Dave and Ron Jeremy are actually the exact same industry. One just sells their mind, just so you know. That's a great joke, Ron. It's a nice joke.
Thanks.
That's a very nice joke. Ron Placone wrote that joke. I'm reading it. It's a great joke. Anyway, so let's move on. Ryan Knight responds. He says, or maybe I just finally woke up and saw that both corporate parties use our government to enrich themselves and their corporate donors, and we the people are paying the price. Seems like a reasonable response from a podcaster talking to a guy punching down, unbelievably punching down. A guy with all the power in the world, handpicked by the richest man in the world to write about progressives in the fucking Washington Post, the biggest platform around. This guy is coming after this guy. And this guy responds reasonably. Well, watch how this guy responds. Yeah, I get that you want people to argue with you online. As opposed to what you're doing right now, Dave? Just for absolutely no reason, picking a fight with a guy who's way lower than you on the fucking journalism ladder. He's the guy looking for a fight, or did you go out looking for him? Yeah, I get that you want to argue with people online. That's called shadow projection. By the way, if you read Carl Jung, that's what Dave Weigel. So Dave Weigel is that. So now he's projecting it onto someone with no money and no power. I get that you want to argue with people online. It's just more interesting to argue with people who can stick to an ideology for more than 10 minutes. Again, pro-war. He was a Republican up until 5 minutes ago. The Democratic Party is now sufficiently shitty and pro-war and pro-Wall Street that Dave Weigel feels comfortable in it. Just like David Frum. He feels comfortable enough. That's what's happening there.
Jimmy, I got to run, but let me just say, he goes from organizing pro-war rallies in college against progressives, because I think he said that he organized these rallies because he was upset with the anti-war activism on campus.
That's right.
So he goes from that organizing rallies against progressives to now pretending that he's a reporter accurately covering progressives. Yes. And he's trying to go after Ryan for changing stripes. I mean, as you say, that's next level projection.
When Ryan comes back and says, you work for Jeff Bezos in the Washington Post and you decided to join the Blue MAGA cult in piling on anyone who dares to vote outside the corrupt two-party system. Get bent. AOC went from just vote for Biden and we'll push him left to you're a bad faith actor if you criticize Biden real quick. Dave Weigel's still going at him. Dave Weigel goes, AOC said one thing, how people saying there's no difference between Trump and Biden have a privileged critique, and it robbed proud socialist resistor of the ability to read. He's still it's amazing. And you know you've sold out working class to the oligarchs when Bezos propagandists are hyping you. That's how you know you sold out. Richest man in the world handpicked Dave Weigel to go shit on progressives, and he's now hyping AOC, so you know AOC is already sold out. That's the point of that. And by the way, and self-anointed socialists are calling people grifters for siding with the independent podcaster over the guy who works for Jeff Bezos. So I'm a grifter. Ryan Knight's a grifter, but the guy who works for Jeff Bezos is totally on the up and up. And just so you know, Amazon is considering suing over a loss of a $10 billion Pentagon contract after Trump attacked Jeff Bezos. And here it is. Here's his pro-war movement springs into action. Students for War is an ad hoc committee recently set up to build support across America for military action. And who set it up? Northwestern University junior Dave Weigel, also editor-in-chief of the campus's weekly Northwestern Chronicle, organized a group of 25 people over an email to counter an anti-war protest on campus last week. Dave Weigel wants to oppose the anti-war protest, what he calls an anti-American movement, the effect of not letting the media treat it like a burgeoning anti-war movement. If there is no pro-America presence whatsoever, it's very easy for American reporters to just toe the anti-American line. That's stunning, right, Aaron? I mean, he's the editor of the Northwestern. That's not, again, some shitty college. That's a top-tier Ivy League school, the Northwestern, right? Some people consider it the Harvard of the Midwest. And he's the editor of their newspaper, and that's the kind of shit he's doing. How stunning is that to you, Aaron, an actual journalist who won awards?
I think it explains his animosity and his inability to contain his contempt for real progressives like you and Ryan Knight, is because he's a fake progressive. He's now posing as one after organizing pro-war rallies in college. And that's got to be a mixed up existence. That's got to be like, it's got to be hard to reconcile every single day, this this false identity. And so, you know, he takes it on you guys. I feel bad for him.
Well, when I was in college, I was at, I was one of the anti-Americans, I guess, because I was attending the anti-war rallies. And I mean, I remember there were pro-war rallies, like it did spread. I mean, I went to Indiana University, so I was in the Midwest too. And it was like, you know, they'd always say stuff to us like, oh, you're anti-American, you don't support the troops. And it's like, well, wait a second. We want the troops to come home. We want this pointless war to end. If you love these wars so much, why don't you go over there and fight them?
Yeah, I mean, he was of fighting age, Dave Weigel. Why don't you go fight in the war if you believe in it so much? Oh, I know why. I know why. Because he's a coward douchebag. And he doesn't have a shred of integrity. That's why Jeff Bezos handpicked him. And there he is. And, he's the kind of guy who walks into a barbershop and they go, sorry, we can't help you. That's the kind of guy. Anyway, I shouldn't do that. But he does look like he looks like that porn guy, right? Ron Jeremy. And he also looks like Tony Clifton. Remember who Tony Clifton was? He was Tony Clifton. He had this.
He was Andy Kaufman's.
Andy Kaufman's character. It was a fake lounge singer. Remember that? He was a fake lounge. He was like the rude lounge singer, and that's what he looks like. It's ironic. Amazing. He looks like Tony Clifton because he's a journalist the same way that Tony Clifton was a lounge singer, all in pretend. And nobody's ever seen Dave Weigel and Andy Kaufman in the same room. That's all I'm saying. No one's ever. That's a true story. No one's ever seen it. True. It's seen it. All right. So, Aaron, get the hell out of here. I know you got to go. So
Thanks, Jimmy.
I have more to do. We're going to do more on Dave Weigel, but we're going to let you go. Okay.
That was easy.
That was easy. So now here is Dave Weigel. So Dave Weigel wrote that Seth Rich story, and he put me in it, and to smear me, right? So now if you go to WikiLeaks, it's still in there, even though I didn't push that Seth Rich thing. I covered the news conference, a press conference that the private investigator, who was an ex-DC cop, who was hired with the approval of the Seth Rich family, gave a press conference. We covered that press conference. The next day, it got revealed that none of that stuff that guy was saying was true. We reported that too and debunked it. Dave Weigel writes in a story that, Seth Rich, fake news, and Jimmy Dore was on it. And so now that's in Wikipedia, and now that follows me forever, even though it's 100% garbage. That's not true whatsoever. We do a daily news show. We covered the press conference in real time, and we also said during that coverage, I don't believe this guy. We have to wait for evidence. We're waiting for evidence on any of this stuff that he's saying about Seth Rich. We're waiting for evidence, unlike the mainstream news, who is not waiting for evidence on Russiagate. We even said that in the report. Dave Weigel ignores all of that, puts me in the middle of that smear piece next to Nazis and pedophiles and the worst people in the world, knowing it will smear me because he was given an order by his boss to smear me in that article.
Well, and it goes even deeper than that, too, because like the ultimate ironic thing that happened during that week was a lot of people who got to it later and then also like criticized the Jimmy Dore show for covering it first. A lot of the things they were using, like that they were saying to like, go against it and stuff like that. They were repeating the questions that we asked 3 days prior.
That's right.
Like they were yelling at us for covering it, and then they repeated our questions.
Yes.
It was like, did you watch?
No.
Like what the fuck?
No, of course they did. Of course Dave Weigel didn't watch that report. He didn't watch it. He just wrote about it. Of course not. He doesn't have to watch it to smear me. He just smeared us. You're right. And the people were repeating back why didn't you say this? Well, we did. All those questions that you have, we had them. We asked them too.
Oh, dude, it was like, I mean, it felt like almost like a dream. They're just like, why didn't you ask da-da-da-da? I was like, we did 3 days before you did.
We did.
We asked that same thing. We did it in real time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why didn't you ask da-da-da-da? We did the next day because, again, we covered it in real time. So we asked these questions on Monday and then these questions on Tuesday. You didn't cover jack shit until like Thursday.
That's right.
So you asked the questions we asked on Monday and then the questions we asked on Tuesday. And tied. It's thick. Shit happens during it.
So Ron confronted Dave Weigel from the Washington Post.
Dave, how are you, man? Ron Placone from the Jimmy Dore Show. Oh, hello. How are you?
So Ron caught up to him at a Bernie event, and Dave Weigel, if you don't know what a guy looks like when he's shitting his pants, this is what it looks like. This is when Dave, the handpicked propagandist, pro-war Republican picked by the richest man in the world to cover politics, is confronted by a scrappy comedian from Pittsburgh. He immediately starts shitting his pants. That's immediately. Watch how many times he sucks on that straw. It's like Jeff Bezos' cock to him. Watch this.
Dave, how are you, man? Ron Placone from the Jimmy Dore Show.
Oh, hello. How are you doing today? Fine.
What brings you here today? Are you covering this for the Washington Post?
Yes, where's the camera?
It's everywhere, man. We got the same drone programs Bezos does. You know what I mean, man? So what are you here for today? Like, what are you covering
Can't
specifically?
stop drinking.
Well, I was in Northern California earlier this week talking to the candidates running for district attorney, progressive district attorney candidates.
Okay, I know we've had our differences, but what's your favorite rock band? Jethro Tull or Gentle Giant?
In that binary choice, Gentle Giant.
When did Gentle Giant make their Aqualung, though?
That's fair. I mean, I would say I like Octopus as much as I like Aqualung, but that's me. That's me and like their family members probably who feel this
Here
way.
we go.
So will you be a little more fair to the Jimmy Dore Show next time?
Fair to the show? I mean, yeah. I can. I don't interact with it very much. I thought it was very. I like people who show up and cover stuff. So. I just felt like some of the accusations, like as somebody who works very hard to cover this beat, I was like, come on, just look at the work. Don't.
So he's complaining that we criticized him because of the conflict of interest that he doesn't disclose, and he's supposed to. Ethically, they don't. So he's saying, why are you calling me out on an ethics violation? Look at the work I do. And what Ron's saying is, why did you do that to us? Why didn't you look at the work we did? Why did you smear us and put us in that shitty article? We're asking for the same courtesy you want from us. By the way, we're giving you that courtesy.
Well, what specifically are you referring to? We can unpack this right now.
Nothing specific. It's been
Nothing specific?
Oh, just attacking the ownership and all that. Like, I just plow ahead. I travel. I talk to people.
Just attacking the ownership. No, we're pointing out, which many other journalistic organizations have pointed out, that it is unethical, Dave, for you to write an article involving the CIA and not disclose that you're funded by the CIA to the tune of $600 million and probably billions of dollars now. The owner of your paper. That's it. That's unethical. And we're not attacking, we're reporting.
Attacking the oligarchs, by the way.
So I speak for
Attacking the ownership of what? The Washington Post?
yeah, that whole thing.
Their owner has a $600 million deal with the CIA, and they never disclosed that.
But why did you deny it on Twitter? That was the kind of thing we got on.
I didn't deny it.
Well, you kind of did. I mean, we have the screenshots.
So instead of copying to it, Dave Weigel lies.
No, I remember what you're talking about, but I don't think.
Close your eyes tighter, Dave.
Trying to think
Close your
about
eyes
this.
tighter.
No, I remember that disagreement was about. I think just conceptually, I think you should look at the work
Close
the
your
paper
eyes.
produces and quibble with part of it. And
Well, don't you think you should look at the work we produce too? Because I felt like you were a little unfair in the way you summarized how we talked about Seth Rich.
What he's doing is he's putting me in the middle of that fucking article about fake news and Seth Rich and pretending that I was misreporting it.
We covered it in real time as it was going on. We asked questions like, why is only one network covering this? Where's the evidence? I mean, we were just asking questions because it was going on in real time. And when we found out that guy didn't actually see the stuff that he said he saw, we said that. We were like, okay, so this guy was kind of bullshitting, but you sort of smeared us a little unfairly.
what about the Joe Rogan appearance after that? The Jimmy Dore?
What are you talking about? That was long after your article, Dave. We're talking about your article, and we're talking about the content that we made that you talked about.
Yeah.
So that's his tell. Whenever he gets caught lying, he immediately starts drinking. He drank that whole thing within 30 seconds. Ron, how long you been talking to him? For about a minute? He downed the whole fucking thing. That's his tell. And then when he closes his eyes and pretends like he's trying to be thinking, that's him thinking of how can I lie about this. He
doesn't engage with the show ever, but he watches your interviews on other shows.
Isn't that funny? I don't
and
engage.
is knowledgeable on them too, apparently.
And by the way, when I went on
something that happened years after what we're talking about.
Years after the Seth Rich coverage, I went on Joe Rogan. And by the way, I didn't talk about Seth Rich on Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan talked about Seth Rich. So he's again conflating. I didn't say anything about Seth Rich on Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan did. And that's again the Washington Post reporter fucking lying. And by the way, you caught him on the timeline and he knows it. It happened years after he wrote that bullshit article. Go ahead. Let's watch it.
you wrote about.
It's honestly not important to me. I mean, I had that argument.
It's not important to me that I smeared a grown-up human being with a fucking career, and now it's following, and I did it in the biggest platform possible, the Washington Post. It doesn't matter to me that I did that, and now that smear follows him for the rest of his life. Why? Because Dave Weigel supports the establishment, and he shits on people who are outside of it. That's his job. That's what he's paid to do, and that's why he doesn't care if he did something horrible and nefarious to an innocent fucking pothead comedian. Doesn't care that he shit on someone doing good work. He doesn't care that he smeared them forever because he has a much bigger platform and now it'll end up in Wikipedia. He knows all that and doesn't fucking care. Why? Because Dave Weigel's a piece of shit. And that's why he works for Jeff Bezos and sleeps like a baby at night. I'm guessing he has sleep apnea.
On Twitter a while ago, and it among other things I've done this year is not tweet that much because I feel like the utility of having these arguments in public is pretty low. But no, I mean, I'm not going to relitigate all that stuff. I made my point. When was that?
Do you feel like maybe you were a little unfair to us?
I would need to go back and look at the screen of all the stuff I said because I honestly.
Dave Weigel, instead of being a guy with integrity and character and admitting it and going, "You got me," yeah, that's a problem. He tries to gaslight the guy and smear the source. That's what they do. They smear the source, just like Dave Weigel smeared me.
It was a year of many online arguments, but I felt like it was a lot of the tone I didn't like was you can't trust what this paper is doing because of these arguments that people had, because of the ownership and all that. And I was
yeah, you can't trust them because you guys are unethical and you don't disclose your conflicts of interest. That's why you can't trust the paper, especially when they're doing things that are unethical and smearing people and giving people the exact opposite opinion of what's actually happening. You can't trust them. Yeah, that's right. You can't trust the Washington Post, Dave, and that's why we have a popular show.
That's just
well, we weren't blanketing everyone as a whole, but we were bringing up the ownership, which does bring about some conflicts of interest, and that's in all the corporate media. The Washington Post is not unique in that regard, but that's all the corporate media. Would you not agree with that?
Somebody who criticized a lot of TV, which I think covers gossip entertainment. I mean, look at
I agree.
The amount of Roseanne coverage versus the amount of Puerto Rico coverage.
Now he's just changing the subject, trying to run away from it. That's it.
Example, I think that's a generally good critique. I felt like if I remember that exact weekend, I was driving around talking to congressional candidates, and I was like, I'm out here actually trying to cover this story. So just read the work. Don't go after a vendetta with the ownership. Yeah. But again, I don't remember it very well. It was like one argument I had in a year of maybe 5,000 online arguments.
Why do you get in so many online arguments, Dave?
I don't anymore. I chilled on it after.
Was that your New Year's resolution?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, just to focus, it's going to be a busy midterm year, so let me point out stuff that's true or false on Twitter occasionally. Otherwise, don't bother.
You want to take a selfie, man, so we can kind of have the peace flag? You want to take... I mean, I don't know if you'll be able to see it because you blocked me on Instagram, but we'll... All right, okay. You'll have to unblock me if you want to see it, my man. Yeah, you blocked me on Instagram.
I appreciate you.
All right, buddy. Yeah, why not, man?
But I honestly...
Life's too short to hold grudges, Dave.
It is, and so I remember I first interacted with Jimmy during the California primary, and I remember seeing him swarmed by Bernie Sanders fans. I wrote a piece about, the Young Turks and the following it had and the people who thought it was covering campaigns in a way that was not being interpreted in media, which at that point, this is like the California primary when most of the mainstream media coverage of Bernie was like, who gives a shit anymore, right?
You poked fun at the joke writing, Dave, and I write a lot of those jokes. Can you point out to a joke that you didn't really like, a joke you didn't care for?
We just saw Dave Weigel, the reporter for the Washington Post, come by with his fake mustache on again. So now he's decided to try to grow a goatee, but it doesn't seem like he has enough testosterone. A guy named Hector Madrigal tweeted this. He says, why are these the top searches for Dave Weigel? And the top search, it says Dave Weigel mustache. So that's Dave Weigel from the Washington Post and his fake mustache.
Can you point out to a joke that you didn't really like, a joke you didn't care for?
I've forgotten many more things than jokes I don't remember. I don't think I've kept the mental space for the jokes. I mean, but I generally don't like the kind of the humor that's like, this is things outrageous. Laugh at the outrageous thing.
I don't think I've ever used the word outrageous in a joke, actually.
Okay. But in general, the check out this thing, here's a clip, we laughed at the clip. It's like, I didn't like it that much of this Daily Show trope, and I don't like it an online trope.
What do you prefer?
I mean, like Chapo. I like that kind of stuff, where people going through an article and like busting on it in a funny way. I like that.
Dave Weigel literally in this article that is supposed to debunk fake news, he literally prints a talking point from the Democrats. Maybe the mustache is it tickles him. And Dave Weigel's not a great writer. I mean, as far as writing where you're entertained by it. Dave Weigel, if he had any character, would be embarrassed that he wrote that in a fucking newspaper article for the Washington Post.
Well, Dave, I appreciate your willingness to talk to us.
No, I appreciate you coming over.
All right. Enjoy covering the event.
These kind of fights are annoying to have, and I honestly wish I remembered more of it. But I also need to get credentialed for this thing, so I'm gonna. Thank you for pointing me to that.
And remember, punching left is never fun. Have fun at the tent, buddy. All right.
Thank you very much.
All right, guys. So I just got to catch up with Dave Weigel. We have had our differences, but I felt like we maybe covered a little ground, maybe smoked the peace pipe a little bit. He prefers Gentle Giant over Jethro Tull, which proves that when it comes to progressive politics and progressive music, Dave has a little bit to learn. But hopefully, he's evolving on some things. We'll see what progress he made. I'm going to post that selfie on Instagram. If he unblocks me, maybe he'll like it. We'll follow up.
Our next live Jimmy Dore show is July 1st in Portland, Oregon. Okay, we'll stop that. Stop it there. Oh, that was fun, Ron. That was fun. I mean, did you ever think that when you got into comedy, you would have a Washington Post lead reporter shitting their pants in public just by sticking a microphone in his face? That was awesome.
Yeah, I guess I never really envisioned a scenario where that would be a thing. But I feel like with his recent thing with Ryan Knight, he's not taking my punching left is never fun advice. But what are you going to do?
No, I
tried.
I know.
I tried.
You tried. Hey, everybody, this is the part where I tell you where all our live shows are, but there aren't any. And then this is why I tell you to join our premium program and get extra content, but nobody's got a fucking job. So just enjoy the video.